Yeah, تفضل إن شاء الله. Okay.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us on our live program. We are covering today the Sponsoring Syria and the Region London 2016 conference, and we are lucky enough to have with us here live at the KTV studios in the heart of Kuwait City two very special guests. First off, we have Ms. Zainab bin Jalnoun, UN Representative Coordinator and UNDP Representative right here in Kuwait. And we have Zainab Gamber, UN OCHA Rep to Kuwait. Thank you both so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
We're very happy to have you, and we're very excited to flood you with questions very shortly. But first we're going to go to a report that our correspondents have prepared for us as kind of an introduction to this very special program. So stay with us.
It's the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Billions of dollars in international aid are needed to support people caught up in the conflict. The Supporting Syria and the Region Conference brings together world leaders from around the globe to raise to the challenge of raising the money needed to help millions of people whose lives have been torn apart by the devastating civil war. The UK, Germany, Kuwait, Norway, and the United Nations co-hosted the conference in London to raise significant new funding to meet the immediate and longer-term needs of those affected. The 2016 UN Interagency Appeals for the Syria crisis are an estimated $7.73 billion. An additional $1.2 billion in funding is required by affected regional governments as part of national response plans. But raising billions in financial support alone will not provide a long-term solution to this protracted humanitarian disaster. The conference will also set itself ambitious goals on education and economic opportunities to transform the lives of refugees caught up in the Syrian crisis and to support the countries hosting them. The event is built on the three previous conferences that have been generously hosted in Kuwait. Kuwait responded to the call by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon by hosting the first International Humanitarian Pledging Conference for Syria in January 2013 in an effort to alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people who are bearing the brunt of this devastating war. Kuwait's contribution was estimated at $300 million of the overall funds that were raised during that conference and was delivered to a number of UN agencies. The second International Pledging Conference for Syria, Kuwait 2014, Owing to the worldwide attention received by the first International Humanitarian Pledging Conference for Syria, and true to Kuwait's old tradition of international cooperation, His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, the Emir of the State of Kuwait, has once again headed Mr. Ban Ki-moon's call by accepting to host the second International Humanitarian Pledging Conference for Syria in mid-January 2014. With the participation of 60 countries, the second conference is projected to raise more than $4 billion in aid for the Syrian people. Kuwait reiterated its call to the United Nations and all members of the international community to rise up to their legal and ethical responsibility towards Syria. The Syrian crisis entered its fifth year, and the brotherly Syrian people are suffering a worsening humanitarian crisis today. The situation has emerged as a disaster for a number of deceased that has exceeded 200,000 people since the crisis outbreak. The state of Kuwait, being the international center for humanitarian work, led by His Highness the Emir of the country, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, the leader of humanitarian work, responded to the humanitarian calls launched by the Secretary General of the United Nations, approved the third conference on March 31, 2015 in Kuwait for the third consecutive year in light of the increasing needs of Syrian refugees and the challenges they face. The pledges made $1.5 billion in 2013, $2.4 billion in 2014, and $3.8 billion in 2015. The United Nations awarded in 2014 His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah the title of Leader of Humanitarian Action. In September 9, 2014, His Excellency the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon hosted at UN headquarters in New York a celebration in honor of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah for His Highness' generous efforts and contributions and for his continuous support for the United Nations humanitarian operations to preserve the lives of people and alleviate their sufferings around the world. This honor is much appreciated since this comes from the highest international organization that is concerned in establishing peace as well as protecting and respecting people's rights. Today, the UK, Germany, Kuwait, Norway, and the United Nations are hosting the fourth conference on the Syrian crisis, this time in London.
Welcome back, viewers. Now, as we know, all those moments that were just discussed in the report are not enough to represent the entire picture of the world's biggest crisis that is affecting the entire population. So we are very lucky to have both of our guests with us today to give us a comprehensive perspective of what happened earlier today in London and what happened in in the past 3 years where Kuwait hosted the different conferences. So again, thank you both so much for being here. I would love to do a short little introduction or summary as to who you guys are so our audience knows. So we'll start with you, Zainab. You've been here since November. Could you tell us a little bit about what your position is at the UN House?
Thank you. I'm Zainab Benjaloun, and I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator and the UNDP representative here in Kuwait. As you mentioned, I've been here for a couple of months, since November of last year. and I'm a career UN diplomat. I have served the organizations in different capacities in different countries throughout my career.
Fantastic. And we will get to it as soon as we can, but I just heard that our correspondent Ahmed Maki is on the line with us live in London, and then we'll get back to you, Zainab. So let's go over to Ahmed.
Hello, Badriya.
Hi, Ahmed. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
We're good. Thank you for joining us. We would love to hear from your side what's going on over there in London. If you could catch us up on what happened today so we can relay it to our viewers.
Okay, as you watched earlier, donor nations pledged today to give billions of dollars in aid to the Syrians, and the world leaders in the conference in London tackled some of the issues that they would like to achieve in the conference. And as you heard, His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Jabr Sabah, has pledged the contribution of $300 million over the next 3 years. And then, as we mentioned earlier, that this conference is being co-hosted by the Kuwait, the United Kingdom, Germany, Norway, and the United Nations. Badriya, as you know, as we all know, Syria is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis right now, and this is the fourth conference being held right now to alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people. And world leaders trying to find ways to find some job opportunities to enhance the education level and to give them a better health care in the future, especially in the neighboring countries surrounding Syria, like Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey.
Right. And Ahmed, since you were there and you got to experience it firsthand, could you give us kind of an idea of what the feel was at the end of the conference? Obviously, a lot was accomplished, but there's a lot more to go. What direction are participants, and what can we expect to see as a result of today's conference?
Like I mentioned earlier, the organizers here they want the aid to be diverted from food handouts towards work, education, opportunities for Syrians in neighboring countries like Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan. And they are trying to find solutions to ease the sufferings of the refugees. And world leaders are all aware that a political solution is necessary to help end the Syrian conflict in the end.
Okay, Ahmed, thank you so much for giving us your first-hand view of what happened today. We appreciate you joining us today. All right, and so Zainab, please, if you could just give us your title and your position. I know you've been here for 4 years.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting us to your show. Thank you so much for the people who are working in Ministry of Information for their continuous support to the activities that is done by OCHA and the rest of the UN team. I'm sure they're appreciative of this. In August 2012, there has been a contract signed between the government of Kuwait and OCHA to establish their office in Kuwait. Since then, I've joined OCHA to establish their offices. We work on a number of activities that can be summed up in 5 or 6 points. We do work like Syria Pledging Conference 1, 2, and 3 as being part of the Secretariat of the UN. So we are in charge of the logistics and the arrangements of Syria Pledging Conferences 1, 2, and 3. We also work on coordination between the NGOs in Kuwait, the UN offices, and the government of Kuwait by extending our support, by extending the capacity building, increasing the capacity building in these NGOs, by coordinating their efforts so it doesn't duplicate when it comes to crisis and disasters around the world. Also, we support the humanitarian envoy, the UN Secretary General Humanitarian Envoy, Dr. Abdullah Matoug al-Matoug, in his role. We ensure the success, we ensure the procession of his role to be met with his term of references.
Fantastic, and how lucky are we to have you both here? I mean, it couldn't be more applicable. So let's just dive right in. What did you guys think of the outcome of today's conference? Since we just got off the phone with Ahmed, it would be nice to kind of stay in line with in line with that? Just like a quick summary.
Well, of course, we don't have full information right now on
Sure, it's
the
fresh.
whole. It's very fresh, and we were very lucky to have the quick feedback that came. So obviously, there's huge commitment from world leaders, and first of all, of course, His Highness the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jaber Sabah, who did pronounce the commitment of Kuwait to support the Syrians in these difficult times. So obviously there is continued commitment and even more commitment, not to only address the humanitarian response and the emergency needs, but more also to address the medium-term and long-term needs of these populations, because this is a protracted crisis, and therefore we need to take care of people's livelihoods, of people's education.
Right.
The Syria crisis has been going on for at least 5 years now. That's the whole primary school level of some of these children, which
Right.
has disappeared. So we do need to focus on ensuring education to these children. We do need to focus on building capacities and supporting these people to earn their own livelihoods, because now this is becoming a way of life. So we need to, even if the crisis were to be resolved tomorrow, as we would all hope, the issues would still be there, and we would still need to address all these livelihood issues, education issues, these health issues, etc.
Right, hence the focus of this year's conference being more on tackling education, and not just education, but supporting the region that is helping take care of these people that have to suffer through this crisis.
Exactly.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit and talk a little more about, about the prior conferences. Now, we know that Kuwait has participated in all efforts aimed at reaching a political solution for the war in Syria. Could you give us your opinion on why Kuwait has chosen not to host 1 or 2, but 3 conferences?
I think Zainab would be able to provide more of an answer, but as a as a newcomer and as an assessment through that, I think that comes from what I believe, and this is a personal opinion, if you like, the sort of the humanitarian sort of vision of the leader of this country, and also of the people, the humanitarian feel of these people. The impression are that Kuwaitis are people who do give a lot and do contribute a lot. If we look at Kuwait's contributions, not only to the humanitarian crisis in Syria, but everywhere, Yemen, in Africa, in Kuwait is always at the forefront of donors to support, to help, to come, and also for the development work. I mean, we see Kuwait contributing to development efforts through the Kuwait Fund in both, in the Middle East, in North Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, in Asia. So this is part, I think, of the nature of the country and the people of this country. That's, but
there is nothing more for me to say. I think what I would like to compliment what Ms. Zainab said. I think what she said was perfect. For Kuwait to have the history of humanitarian and giving has extended long before the oil. So this has been going on forever. It's in its people, it's in its cultures, it's in its religion. So the humanitarian efforts, or the humanitarian giving aspect or character that Kuwaiti nationals have, or the Emir of Kuwait under his leadership, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jaber Sabah, is in their bones. So this is not something new. As for hosting Syria Pledging Conference 1, 2, and 3, the history behind that is when the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon met with His Highness the Emir. He suggested, at the beginning of the crisis in Syria, he suggested that maybe we should host a pledging conference, and the Emir of Kuwait welcomed the idea by saying, let's host it in Kuwait. If you go back to the history of Syria, the Syria crisis, the humanitarian crisis in Syria, it's not only the only crisis that's happening right now. Simultaneously, our 5 large crises are happening, humanitarian crisis. But our focus is on Syria right now because, excuse me, of the Syria Pledging Conference. So if you look at a humanitarian crisis, the longer it stays, the more complex it becomes. And it requires more of collaboration between the development, economics, and humanitarian
Right, more long-term solutions
responses.
than Band-Aids, yeah.
Yes, not just immediate response, but to think ahead and have strategies and plans ahead. We do have people who come up with statistics, who do studies and evaluations, and that's how the 3RP, the Regional Resilience and Refugee Plan was developed. Also, the regional plan was developed. So, as I was mentioning, the longer the crisis happens, the more complex it becomes.
Right.
And no matter how much the pledging conferences are held around the world, it still affects the magnitude of one crisis will still affect the entire globe, the entire country. So as you can see right now, the Syria crisis is not only affecting the ones who are participating in Syria Pledging Conference, it's affecting the entire Europe continent, Asia, from the United States and all the countries around the world. So the magnitude of one crisis can affect the entire world. So imagine having 5 simultaneous crises happening at the same time.
Exactly, right. As we become more of a global community, of course, things are going to trickle, and we can't ignore these things. And which, like you said, is why we have to think of long-term solutions, hence today's specific conference goals. I want to go back to what you had brought up about His Highness the Emir and his natural tendency to give, not just His Highness the Emir, but the whole state of Kuwait, to give towards humanitarian aid and such needs. Last September 2014, 2 Septembers ago, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah was honored as the humanitarian leader and Kuwait the Humanitarian Center by the UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon. Could you tell us a bit about your opinion of that honoring specifically?
Well, I mean, it's linked to what I was saying earlier. I mean, this is in recognition of the great humanitarian efforts that the Emir and the people of Kuwait have been deploying over the years and historically. And I think the recognition by Mr. Ban Ki-moon of this role and naming His Highness the Emir a humanitarian leader is in that vein, that the country and its leaders are leaders in this area, and this needs to be recognized and made much more visible. So that's I think that's the point, or the objective behind this recognition, is to recognize something that has been going on for quite some time,
Right.
and that needs to be highlighted to the attention of the world community, so that Kuwait is serving as an example, as a model to the world of supports to other countries and communities in need.
I don't know if you had, it looked like you said you wanted to say something, but maybe I misread that.
As for the recognition of the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Ahmed al-Jaber Sabah, it came, I think, in the perfect time at the perfect location.
Right.
So when it was decided, the decision was made that a recognition would be given to His Highness the Emir of Kuwait. It was given as a chain of humanitarian actions, one after another, from Kuwait to the entire world. A lot of people have been saying this, maybe I've been repeating it more than once, that if you drop a needle on a humanitarian map around the world, you will find that Kuwait has a humanitarian project there. So Kuwait has been extending their humanitarian work around the world for decades, for ages. So in addition to this, the Emir of Kuwait has been known for his diplomacy. So combining the diplomacy with humanitarian work, it becomes a humanitarian diplomacy. And this has been also an aspect of Kuwait's leadership and vision. Having to work under leadership who has a vision of humanitarian relief or humanitarian support to other unfortunate countries is a privilege.
Right.
So the recognition of the Emir of Kuwait came at the right time to recognize not only the efforts made by the government of Kuwait, but also the people of Kuwait on how they support each other, how they support other countries who are less fortunate than they should be.
Right, and you see that, like you had mentioned, not just in Syria, but you see that with the Palestinian issue, with droughts and famines around the world. Like you
Yemen.
said, I like that vision. If you drop a pin anywhere on the map, Kuwait will have a humanitarian.
Yeah.
It seems very appropriate for the UN Secretary General to dub Kuwait the humanitarian center of the world, right? So then we shift this year to London. Why London? Do you know why we've moved from Kuwait to London? What about London can accomplish the specific goals that were set in mind for today's conference?
I don't think there's a specific reason for London because the conference is co-hosted by top donors.
Right.
Kuwait, Great Britain, Norway, Germany, and the United Nations. So the location does not really matter. What matters is that the commitment is still there, and it's extending even more. Moving it to another country might just expand the allies as well.
Sure.
So it's not localized. But the important thing is that we see that the main supporters, led by Kuwait, are co-hosting and co-organizing and co-advocating, if you like.
That's going to have a strong effect on others that are watching to see the top donors come up in front and be leaders all together, right?
Exactly. And I think that's very, very important. It's a strong signal of solidarity together around, the plights of thousands and millions of people around the world, basically.
Right, and who better to host that than the top four donors for the conference. So the international community has a responsibility to help the 3.5 million vulnerable and displaced people inside of Syria and 4.2 million Syrians in neighboring countries. As we know, however, the 7